I started hearing whispers about Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire.
Admiral Thrawn still may yet be the most interesting character in the current post-Return of the Jedi Star Wars universe, and there are a multitude of things that make him so enigmatic and mysterious. I dare to say it's even hard to call Thrawn the quintessential villain, when considering his backstory and where he comes from. Though he's at odds with Ahsoka Tano during the events of Season 1, it's what happens before that gives Thrawn this depth and mystery of both the past and present. And with his actions leading up to his return to the known galaxy, with his new ally in the ancient Nightsiters, we have to wonder, what is Thrawn's goal? But more importantly, is Thrawn still loyal to his people, the CHISS? And what is his angle for the CHISS, who still remain lurking in the Outer Rim, dealing with an even possible greater threat than the Sith at large? To really get into the thick of this theory of Thrawn's potential loyalties at the current rate, we have to talk about a several-part analysis. First, starting with Thrawn's backstory with the CHISS, his allegiances, his enemies, and his mission before entering the known galaxy. So where does Thrawn begin, and how are his loyalties valued in his younger years? Let's revisit Thrawn's canon origins and see if we can find some valuable information about our blue friend.
What manner of creature are you?
One beyond your power to destroy.
It would not seem so.
You cannot see. But I can.
What do you see?
I see your defeat, like many arms surrounding you in a cold embrace.
Now, Thrawn's backstory is very much fleshed out both in canon and legends, and there are some comparative differences, notably as it pertains to Thrawn's persona. When referring to Legends content, Thrawn was adopted into a ruling family after impressing them during his time training at their military academies. And during his time in the CHISS military, Thrawn was exemplary in many ways, rising the ranks and certainly attaining this aura of being a shining star. But the timelines here of both canon and legends begin to change as Thrawn approaches his timely end with the CHISS, or so it would seem. During Legends, the ultimate moment is pursuant to the Outbound Flight Project. Now, we've covered the project before, but for the purposes of this video, here's a quick recap. In summary, Jedi Master Joruus C'baoth, who continually pushes the boundaries of gray and dark, seeks the approval of moving a select group of Jedi and non-Force users to an extra-galactical location. The entire purpose of this at face value was to establish the Republic in different galaxies. But on the subliminal level, Joruus was using this to essentially start his own society, as he felt the Jedi were making the wrong decisions while also feeling that Force users were inherently superior to non-Force users. So in essence, the attempt was really to break away from society at large and start his own how he saw fit. The path of the outbound flight included passage through CHISS territory, and after the CHISS had been giving warning, including from Darth Sidious's political camp itself, Thrawn sought to have the outbound flight project moved away from CHISS space and to seek passage elsewhere. Thrawn, having given Joruus the option to find another way, was rejected, and ultimately a dark-sided Joruus made an attempt on Thrawn's life via a Force choke. And at that moment, Thrawn's team put into effect an attack which all but killed 1% of those aboard the outbound flight, including almost 20 Jedi. And this was really the major red flag here. As CHISS doctrine generally dictates, preemptive strikes were avoided. The ruling family saw the CHISS's actions as heinous. However, in the shadows, Palpatine was impressed and figured that he would make attempts to recruit Thrawn, as Thrawn's visions for power rivaled his own, even if it were for different reasons. Where Palpatine sought unlimited, unquestioned power, Thrawn's initiative really came from a position of strengthening the CHISS against their main adversary, the ever-dangerous Grisk, while rivaling the power of the Galactic Empire, who could turn on the CHISS at any given moment. But where the idea of loyalty comes into play now is how Thrawn goes about breaking away from the CHISS. You see, Thrawn still wanted to maintain himself in his good graces, and voluntarily electing to step down from the CHISS would be seen as borderline traitorous, but also a rejection of his people, their ideology. As such, Thrawn maintained a sort of facade of loyalty, despite being attached to the idea of working with Palpatine. So how exactly did he go about leaving the CHISS? In essence, he self-sabotages himself. By utilizing more preemptive strikes in his military operations, Thrawn would be banished and exiled into an unknown planet just before the Outer Rim, having been stripped of all of his titles and rankings. As mentioned before, during his time of exile in Legends, Thrawn still thought of his people and desired to return to elevate the CHISS and protect the CHISS against the Grisk and possibly the Empire. He just simply felt that this was the way to go about this task, circumventing CHISS political structure and going to the Empire where power was more freely given under Palpatine. Now, canon differs in a significant way that is paramount to Thrawn's character and how this dictates Thrawn's future after the events of Ahsoka, and whether or not he's really going to stay the quintessential villain. According to the new canon literature, Thrawn was exiled for a completely different purpose. While working in an effort to learn more about the Outer Rim during his military service with the CHISS expansionary fleet, Thrawn encountered a group of refugee Neimoidians. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, the Neimoidians of planet Neimoidia were affiliated with the separatist movement during the waning years of the Republic. Their gripe, while initially political, became a military conflict upon the blockade of Naboo under the influence of then Darth Sidious, obviously who later turned out to be Palpatine. Immediately after Anakin swears allegiance to Darth Sidious/Palpatine, Palpatine dispatches Anakin to eliminate the leadership of the separatist movement, including the heads of the Neimoidian political class. As such, many Neimoidians and separatists alike went on to move away, fearing political persecution and death as the separatists, just like the Jedi, lost a ward. In their encounter with Thrawn, the Neimoidians warned of harrowing tales of destruction and treatment by the Empire. And upon reporting this news to his command and political hierarchy, the CHISS became worried by the news from Thrawn. The fear of a two-front war and being in between the Grisk and the Empire drew new fears and prompted action. As such, Thrawn became tasked with a mission of sorts, and it came by way of a fake exile to justify Thrawn going on a secret mission. Thrawn, in agreement with the high-up power and the CHISS hierarchy, willingly became a scapegoat, and like in Legends was stripped of all titles and exiled to an unnamed planet. And what was the mission? Discover the usefulness of the Empire and find out whether they're friend or foe? How would they perceive the CHISS, and how could they become allies in a potential conflict with the Grisk? So comparatively, Legends Thrawn is more selfish, and that his curiosity led him to actively breaking CHISS accords, to itch at his own desires for power. And while his motivation included returning to help the CHISS one day against the Grisk, his personal motivations certainly outweighed those of loyalty. In canon though, Thrawn's loyalty was more concrete and steadfast, and he willingly takes a major hit towards his public perception. As you may have already gathered, for the CHISS, your name and what you stand for is everything. Willingly becoming the subject of exile in order to further the mission of your people is nothing short of true devotion, and it leads to the question, what is Thrawn's angle with the NIGHTSITERS and his return to the known galaxy? Thrawn could have used this chance to return to the CHISS instead after Ahsoka, but instead seeks to go back to the known galaxy with a new ally, or so it seems. But in all, there's more information to be found and more theories to be made. Now, though Thrawn wasn't so politically savvy at first, being a military operator more than anything else, let's take a look at Thrawn's greatest alliances during his time with the Empire to gather some more clues for our theory.
Sounds like you win.
Now tell me, where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Canonically speaking, Thrawn's alliances certainly shed more light on his motivations and who he was truly loyal to. Where in Legends it seems he wanted to defect from the CHISS more for personal gains as a top priority, his alliances in canon, which we should strictly go by for final consideration, certainly leans in one direction. And the most evidence of this comes from Thrawn's interactions with Palpatine and his reconnection with the CHISS. Around 1 year before the Battle of Yavin, Thrawn is sent on a mission of sorts that involves him reconnecting with the CHISS. During this reconnection, Thrawn reconvenes again with Admiral ARALANI, Thrawn's CHISS confidant, and both who held high admiration for each other. In their dialogue, as detailed by the novel Thrawn Treason by Timothy Zahn, Thrawn makes clear to ARALANI that his heart is with the CHISS, despite his current sworn allegiance to the Empire. And this is something that Palpatine was always somewhat aware of, and even more so now. Because Palpatine is so keen on taking over the unknown regions as well, and despite it being known to the audience, it is something that certainly plays on Thrawn's mind, because while Thrawn is gauging the Empire's next move and trying to align with them, Palpatine clearly has another idea in mind: the eventual takeover of the CHISS and the unknown regions. His relationship with Thrawn is also somewhat strained more when Palpatine and Tarkin favor the Death Star plans over the TIE Defender program, which is essentially Thrawn's personal project, one that he guarantees will work militarily. After the events of Thrawn Treason, Palpatine expresses displeasure with Thrawn and seeks to speak with him about his loyalty. Instead of killing Thrawn though, he does send Thrawn on his final mission to Lothal. And that's kind of interesting. Palpatine is known to see the future. Was this his way of sending Thrawn to his death?
My gratitude to Senator Chuchi for exposing a rogue element within our ranks. But I assure you, Admiral Rampart will face the consequences for his treachery. It is time for a change. Building a strong galaxy requires protection and security.
Was this the killing of two birds with one stone for Palpatine? And there on Lothal, as we know, Thrawn disappears into the void and onto Peridea, leaving a void in the Empire's ranks. Further evidence of Thrawn's loyalties can be seen especially as well through the camaraderie with his subordinate during the time of the Empire with Eli Vanto. Eli Vanto became Thrawn's confidant when Thrawn allowed him to be captured by the Empire. Vanto came in handy, being that he knew Sai-Bisti, which Thrawn utilized as well. Thus, Vanto's translation skills would link them together for the foreseeable future and change both their lives dramatically. Now, admittedly, Thrawn also saw Vanto as an ally through his skill set, where Vanto possessed important analytical skills, even helping Thrawn learn about the Death Star project without anyone else knowing, including Palpatine and Vader. Thrawn's loyalties shine through with Vanto when he offers Vanto the opportunity to work for the CHISS Ascendancy, and obviously it's an offer off the record, as it would see Vanto desert the Empire. Thrawn, having made Eli certainly a comrade, has Vanto convinced, and thus he joins. I would say this is another clear indicator that Thrawn's loyalties are to the CHISS above all else, because Thrawn is essentially poaching the Empire's best talents and moving them elsewhere, perhaps even saving Vanto for his own return to the CHISS later on. Now, in Legends there are a lot of examples to cite regarding loyalties about Thrawn, but let's take this theory in an interesting route, where both canon and Legends meet in the middle of this conversation. And for that, let's move forward with the concept that Thrawn remains most loyal to the CHISS above all else. Thrawn evokes loyalties from those who serve and work for him. In both Legends and canon, he's overall known to be fair and value hard work. In the case of Eli Vanto, he regarded him so highly to offer him a position in the CHISS ranks. And with ARALANI, she simply always held the respect of Thrawn. In the Ahsoka series as well, we see Thrawn has retained the loyalty of his Imperial forces, as well as the Night Sisters. And while the Night Sisters may certainly be aligned with Thrawn for other reasons, they certainly do serve him in the role with some semblance of mutual respect. And this relationship begs the question as to what their mutual benefit will be. Or could there be a deeper story at play here? Specifically, what happened to Thrawn when he arrived in Peridea? What happened to Ezra when he arrived in Peridea? And how did the Night Sisters and our friends come to meet in the middle? All great theories for another time. So with the time we have now, all we can really do is speculate on Thrawn's loyalty. And something tells me that Thrawn and the Night Sisters have some sort of deal in place, and my gut also tells me that it involves the Night Sisters retaking their homeworld with some guarantee of no interference from a Thrawn-run empire. But alas, that all remains to be seen. Another area we can vividly see the essence of Thrawn's loyalty to are to his rank and file. Donned in a new type of uniform, including a clear ranking through a new helmet, Thrawn's forces are even more devoted to him. And this is striking because normally during a time of strife, mutinous behavior is certainly encouraged. And judging by the number of forces left over, if there was an attempt at a mutiny, it was certainly never a good one. Specifically, I think Thrawn's loyalties will certainly guarantee his regiment some sort of reward at the end. And I think you can see the fanaticism as well in the ranks, especially when looking at the Mask of Enoch, which sort of dons an Imperial Roman vibe. It's also worth noting that Thrawn was always level-headed in most approaches barring extremely rare circumstance. Though he rarely lost, when he did, or felt like he was losing, he didn't have major issues in accepting defeat. His worldview of live to fight another day certainly resonates with his crews, as they were not treated as useless cannon fodder. These loyalties show in canon when troopers stay behind on Peridea to defend Thrawn's mission, with the agreement of Morgan Elsbeth to do the same. If you do decide to dive deeper into the Thrawn novelizations, which I'm attempting to do now myself, albeit on an extremely busy schedule, you certainly see some examples where Thrawn garners loyalties by treating his subordinates with respect, and even standing tall in the face of figures like Vader. And I think as Thrawn plays the long game, the loyalties he draws from those around him is so strong that those same people may want to serve him one day in another capacity, and it certainly culminates that way so far in canon. Now, I did feel compelled to talk a little bit about Baylan, Skoll, and Shin Hati. I think Thrawn knew exactly who they both were, and I think he did all of his research, though, interestingly enough, we don't see Thrawn reveal all that much about Shin. I think it's worth saying that Thrawn actually views Baylan and Shin as a major threat. In fact, I'd go on to say that Thrawn and Baylan both see each other as truly their biggest enemies, and this is something I will certainly be making a video on in the future. But again, worth noting that Thrawn has exactly zero loyalty and interest in the Darkside user pair. Rather, I think upon meeting them, he knew he'd use Ezra as a means to strand them both, or at least in his mind, that's what he thought they were chasing. Because contending for power with the Imperial Remnants, New Republic, and Nightsisters would be extremely detrimental to Thrawn's quest for power. So with all of this considered and Thrawn's loyalty seemingly still to the CHISS, I wonder what the future really holds for Thrawn with his return to the known galaxy after leaving Peridea. When looking at all the factors I've laid out here, it certainly seems that perhaps his return to the known galaxy after Peridea is another move in a larger chess match for Thrawn. Because again, nothing Thrawn does is without purpose. I truly do believe that Thrawn sees the known galaxy's order as paramount for the preservation of the CHISS, and I also believe that Thrawn simply believes that this means a stronger galaxy that may have to confront the Grisk threat should the occasion arise. And despite Thrawn's ascendance to the Empire, it doesn't seem to be selfish. Rather, I'd say it's selfless. Leaving his people, faking an exile, and tarnishing his reputation and starting all over again in a xenophobic empire is certainly courageous and admirable. And though his loyalties still remain to the CHISS, I do think his actions again are for a better and safer galactic-wide situation. Part of me just truly believes that Thrawn is efficient, and he knows trying to convince an idealistic Jedi and Republic to be on the side of a strong empire in an effort to fight an ancient enemy in the distances of the unknown regions is impractical.
Track down this bounty hunter, you must, Obi-Wan.
Most importantly, find out who he's working for.
What about Senator Amidala? She will still need protecting.
Handle that. Your Padawan will.
Anakin, escort the Senator back to her home planet of Naboo. She'll be safer there. And don't use registered transport. Travel as refugees.
As the leader of the opposition, it will be very difficult to get Senator Amidala to leave the capital.
Until caught, this killer is. Our judgment she must respect.
Because remember, those in the known galaxy are not privy to the Grisk, and clearly Thrawn is. Dare I say, fears the Grisk situation, where the Republic, Empire, and Ascendancy are not ready for this all-out war. So it'll be interesting to see what Thrawn's next move is. It's very clear that in canon, Thrawn's loyalties still reside with the CHISS above all else. He's simply taking one step at a time and not playing his full hand. And that plan is certainly in motion, though what the exact plan is truly remains to be seen. However, amidst all this speculation, one thing seems to be true. Thrawn's past seems to point his loyalties back to the CHISS despite his long tenure with the Empire. So I want to know, what do you guys think of Thrawn's loyalties? Especially given what's happened in Peridea. Is Thrawn playing the super long game here? Has he shifted focus to attaining ultimate power in Palpatine's absence? Or is he still working to create a cooperative galaxy to prepare for the upcoming Grisk war and invasion? Definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Definitely like this video because it helps the channel a lot. Drop a subscription, share with a friend, and until next time, may the Force be with you, always.